In the best case scenario, a web renewal team will all be aware of how people with disabilities use the web so that that's embedded in how they're thinking about the project going forward. So it might look like a web renewal team who might not be familiar with accessibility, but they invite someone who is an expert or who has personal experience, or even a smaller committee to act in an advisory role.
Our previous website was really stagnant and it needed to be revamped. And it took a while to really present the case to and be approved.
We worked with a consultant, a web strategy consultant, to put together a web strategy. So they worked on taking a look at doing an environmental scan, seeing what our competitors were, looking at our the gap assessment on where our technology was lacking, looking at the accessibility requirements, and giving us that whole strategy on how we build our case to move forward for a new website.
So once that web strategy was created, it led to the creation of a business case and then, of course, an RFP to select the CMS technology and the partners that we would move forward with.
Right from the start, accessibility was put in as a requirement for the project. The language that was in Laurier's request for proposals from different web companies was adapted and borrowed from the language that is in the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act so that they would know about the web content accessibility guidelines. So right from the beginning, the vendors that we were working with were aware of what they had to do to make the website accessible. So when they came in and we did consultations, they invited accessibility experts across campus to the table.
My name is Chantal Hunick and I'm studying for a Master's of Divinity and Social Work at Laurier. I have cerebral palsy, so that affects my vision as well as my fine motor and gross motor skills. I really appreciated that the designers of the website were mindful of accessibility before students with disabilities came on the scene and said, "Hey, did you think about this? Because I noticed this gap." The idea that accessibility was not an afterthought, but a forethought was really surprising and affirming for me.
So the team that made up the web renewal project were members from both the IT departments and the marketing communications departments.
We had a user experience designer, we had a web content specialist, and on the IT team we have a CMS administrator, we had a project manager, as well as an IT manager that worked closely with us on a daily basis from an IT perspective.
We also had a team from the infrastructure point of view because we needed new servers, so our whole infrastructure team was involved as well.
Throughout the entire process, we worked collaboratively with the Accessible Learning Center as well as the accessibility officer. Every time we had something new to show them, we would try and put it in front of them, design concepts. We would call them with questions. We wanted to make sure that we were aware of the needs that, of course, is their area of expertise.
The web renewal team was in touch with me to learn about what the requirements were under the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. They were also interested in connecting with me to connect with the Laurier community, who our students are with disabilities. At our Accessible Learning Center, we have advisors there who work one-on-one with students with disabilities.
My name is Jane Friedrich. I'm the assistive technologist here at Laurier. The lab is a 24-hour access lab for students with disabilities to come and work. I assist students with training, with assessing their equipment and the software that they might use. Oftentimes, you'll test with a software tool, and because there's not the interactivity, perhaps the mistakes that people make, you won't get that real-life feel for what actually could happen when somebody uses the website. Everybody's navigation is different, everybody's type of interaction is different with websites.
I would say one of the key processes is not just to have one token tester, if you will, with a disability, but have people with several different types of limitations, because what works for me might not work for someone else with even different limitations or even similar limitations.
Just through the whole process, when we were at the stage when we knew we were heading to meet certain accessibility requirements, knowing if you needed to go level A to the double A, what the differences are, how we get to, because ultimately we want to get to a double A website. How did our accessibility office see that so that we met their needs? Because that ultimately, we want to make sure we met the needs of our internal audience.
Our old website didn't really have anything that would pass accessibility testing, unfortunately. So we started from scratch, which was a great way to do it. Everything from, images with our alt tags and the way that we have our headers and our headlines written out within the content. The colors, they needed to pass accessibility testing. We didn't have any of that would be passable on the old site. So all of those things needed to be considered and needed to pass the testing and make sure that we meet the requirements.
It's challenging because everyone's on a pretty tight deadline in terms of launch and wanting to get it out there, but to allow yourself enough time to gather that input from the community